Good morning and welcome to Tuesdays with the Pilgrim. Today we continue reading C.S. Lewis's book, The Great Divorce, with Chapter 9. At this point we were suddenly interrupted by the thin voice of a ghost talking at an enormous speed. Looking behind us, we saw the creature. It was addressing one of the solid people, and was doing so too busily to notice us. Every now and then the solid spirit tried to get in a word, but without success. The ghost's talk was like this. "Oh, my dear, I've had such a dreadful time. I don't know how I ever got here at all. I was coming with Eleanor Stone, and we arranged the whole thing, and we were to meet at the corner of Stink Street. I made it perfectly plain because I knew what she was like, and if I told her once, I told her 100 times I could not meet her outside that dreadful Major Banks woman's house. Not after the way she treated me. That was one of the most dreadful things that happened to me. I've been dying to tell you because I felt sure you'd tell me I acted rightly. No, wait a moment, dear, till I've told you. I've tried living with her when I first came, and it was all fixed up. And she was to do the cooking, and I was to look after the house, and I didn't think I was going to be comfortable after all we'd been through. But she turned out to be so changed, absolutely selfish, and not a particle of sympathy for anyone but herself. And as once I said to her, I do think I am entitled to a little consideration, because you at least lived out your time. But I oughtn't to have been here for years and years yet. But of course I'm forgetting. You don't know. I was murdered, simply murdered, dear. That man should never have operated. I ought to be alive today, and they simply starved me in that dreadful nursing home. No one ever came to see me, and—" The shrill monotonous whine died away as the speaker, still accompanied by the bright presence at her side, moved out of hearing. "What troubles ye, son?" said my teacher. "I am troubled, sir," I said, "because that unhappy creature doesn't seem to me to be the sort of soul that ought to be even in danger of damnation. She isn't wicked, only a silly, garrulous old woman, who has got into this habit of grumbling, that a little kindness and rest and change would do her all right. That is what she once was. That is maybe what she still is. If so, she certainly will be cured. But the whole question is whether she is now a grumbler." "I should have thought that there was no doubt about that," I said. "Aye, but you misunderstand me. The question is whether she is a grumbler, or only a grumbler. If there is a real woman, even the least trace of one, still there inside the grumbling, it can be brought to life again. If there is one wee spark under all those ashes, we'll blow it until the whole pile is red and clear. But if there's nothing but ashes, we'll not go on blowing on them in our own eyes forever. They must be swept up. But how can there be a grumbler without a grumbler? The whole difficulty of understanding hell is that the thing to be understood is so nearly nothing. But you'll have the experiences. It begins with a grumbling mood, and you yourself still distinct from it, perhaps criticizing it. And you yourself in a dark hour may will that mood, embrace it. You can repent and come out of it again, but there may come a day when you can do that no longer. Then there will be no you left to criticize the mood, nor even to enjoy it, but just the grumbling itself going on forever like a machine. But come, you are here to watch and listen. Lean on my arm and we will go for a little walk." I obeyed. To lean on the arm of someone older than myself was an experience that carried me back to childhood, and with this support I found the going tolerable. So much so, indeed, that I flattered myself my feet were already growing more solid, until a glance at the poor transparent shapes convinced me that I owed all this ease to the strong arm of the teacher. Perhaps it was because of his presence that my other senses also appeared to be quickening. I noticed scents in the air which had hitherto escaped me, and the country put on new beauties. There was water everywhere, and tiny flowers quivering in the early breeze. Far off in the woods we saw deer glancing past, and once a sleek panther came purring to my companion's side. We also saw many ghosts. I think the most pitiable was a female ghost. Her trouble was the very opposite of that which afflicted the other, the lady frightened by the unicorns. This one seemed quite unaware of her phantasmal appearance. More than one of the solid people tried to talk to her, and at first I was quite at a loss to understand her behavior to them. She seemed to be contorting her all but invisible face, and writhing her smoke-like body in a quite meaningless fashion. At last I came to the conclusion, incredible as it seemed, that she supposed herself still capable of attracting them, and was trying to do so. She was a thing that had become incapable of conceiving conversation, save as a means to that end. If a corpse already liquid with decay had arisen from the coffin, smeared its gums with lipstick, and attempted a flirtation, the result could not have been more appalling. In the end she muttered, "Stupid creatures," and turned back to the bus. This put me in mind to ask my teacher what he thought of the affair with the unicorns. "It will maybe have succeeded," he said. "You will have divined that he meant to frighten her. Not that fear itself could make her less a ghost, but if it took her mind for a moment off herself, there might, in that moment, be a chance. I have seen them saved so." We met several ghosts that had come so near to heaven only in order to tell the celestials about hell. Indeed, this is one of the commonest types. Others, who had perhaps been, like myself, teachers of some kind, actually wanted to give lectures about it. They brought fat notebooks full of statistics and maps, and one of them a projector. Some wanted to tell anecdotes about the notorious sinners of all ages whom they had met below. But the most part seemed to think that the mere fact of having contrived for themselves so much misery gave them a kind of superiority. "You have led a sheltered life," they bawled. "You don't know the seamy side. We'll tell you. We'll give you some hard facts," as if to tinge heaven with its infernal images and colors that had been the only purpose for which they came. All alike, so far as I could judge from my own exploration of the lower world, were wholly unreliable, and all equally incurious about the country in which they had arrived. They repelled every attempt to teach them, and when they found that nobody listened to them, they went back, one by one, to the bus. This curious wish to describe hell turned out, however, to be only the mildest form of a desire very common among the ghosts, the desire to extend hell, to bring it bodily, if they could, into heaven. There were tub-thumping ghosts who in thin, bat-like voices urged the blessed spirits to shake off their fetters, to escape from their imprisoned happiness, to tear down the mountains with their hands, to seize heaven for their own. Hell offered her cooperation. They were planning ghosts who implored them to dam the river, to cut down the trees, to kill the animals, build a mountain railway, smooth out the horrible grass and moss and heather with asphalt. There were materialistic ghosts who informed the immortals that they were deluded. There was no life after death, and this whole country was a hallucination. There were ghosts plain and simple, mere bogies, fully conscious of their own decay, who had accepted the traditional role of the spectre, and seemed to hope they could only frighten someone. I had had no idea this desire was possible. But my teacher reminded me that the pleasure of frightening is by no means unknown on earth, and also of Taccius saying, quote, "They terrified lest they should fear," unquote. When the debris of the decayed human soul finds itself crumbled into ghosthood and realizes, "I myself am now that which all humanity has feared. I am just that cold churchyard shadow, that horrible thing which cannot be, yet somehow is," then to terrify others appears to it an escape from the doom of being a ghost, yet still fearing ghosts. Fearing even the ghost it is, for to be afraid of oneself is the last horror. But beyond all these I saw other grotesque phantoms in which hardly a trace of the human form remained. Monsters who had faced the journey to the bus stop, perhaps for them it was thousands of miles, and come up to the country of the shadow of life, and limped far into it over the torturing grass, only to spit and gibber out in one ecstasy of hatred their envy, and, what is harder to understand, their contempt of joy. The voyage seemed to them a small price to pay if once, only once, within sight of that eternal dawn, they could tell the prigs, the toffs, and the sanctimonious humbugs, the snobs and the halves, what they thought of them. "How do they come to be here at all?" I asked my teacher. "I have seen that kind converted," he said, when those you would think less deeply damned have gone back. Those that hate goodness are sometimes nearer than those who know nothing at all about it, and think they have it already. "Wits now," said my teacher suddenly. We were standing close to some bushes, and beyond them I saw one of the solid people and a ghost who had apparently just that moment met. The outlines of the ghost looked vaguely familiar, but I soon realized that what I had seen on earth was not the man himself, but photographs of him in the papers. He had been a famous artist. "God?" said the ghost, glancing around the landscape. "God what?" asked the spirit. "What do you mean, God what?" asked the ghost. "In our grammar, God is a noun." "Oh, I see. I only meant by gum, or something of that sort. I meant, I should like to paint this." "I shouldn't bother about that just at present, if I were you." "Look here, isn't one going to be allowed to go on painting?" "Looking comes first." "But I've had my look. I've seen just what I wanted to do. God! I wish I'd thought of bringing my things with me." The spirit shook his head, scattering light from his hair as he did so. "That sort of thing's no good here," he said. "What do you mean?" said the ghost. "When you painted on earth, at least in your earlier days, it is because you caught glimpses of heaven in the earthly landscape. The success of your painting was that it enabled others to see the glimpses too. But here you are having the thing itself. It is from here that the messages came. There is no good telling us about this country, for we see it already. In fact, we see it better than you do." "Then there's never going to be any point in painting here." "I don't say that. When you've grown into a person, it's all right, we all had to do it. There'll be some things which you'll see better than anyone else. One of the things you'll want to do will be to tell us about them. But not yet. At present your business is to see. Come and see. He is endless. Come and be fed." There was a little pause. "That will be delightful," said the ghost presently in a rather dull voice. "Come then," said the spirit, offering his arm. "How soon do you think I could begin painting?" it asked. The spirit broke into laughter. "Don't you see you'll never paint at all if that's what you're thinking about?" he said. "What do you mean?" said the ghost. "Why, if you are interested in the country only for the sake of painting it, you'll never learn to see the country." "But that's just how a real artist is interested in the country." "No, you're forgetting," said the spirit. "That was not how you began. Light itself was your first love. You loved paint only as a means of telling about light." "Oh, that's ages ago," said the ghost. "What grows out of that? Of course you haven't seen my later works. One becomes more and more interested in paint for its own sake." "One does indeed. I have also had to recover from that. It was all a snark. Ink and catgut and paint were necessary down there, but here they are also dangerous stimulants. Every poet and musician and artist, but for grace, is drawn away from the love of the thing he tells to the love of telling, till down in deep hell they cannot be interested in God at all, but only in what they say about him. For it doesn't stop at being interested in paint, you know. They sink lower, become interested in their own personalities, and then in nothing but their own reputations." "I don't think I'm much troubled in that way," said the ghost stiffly. "That's excellent," said the spirit. "Not many of us had quite got over it when we first arrived. But if there is any of that inflammation left, it will be cured when you come to the fountain." "What fountain is that?" "It's up there in the mountains," said the spirit, "very cold and clear between two green hills, a little like Lethe. But when you have drunk of it, you will forget forever all the proprietorship in your own works. You'll enjoy them just as if they were someone else's, without pride and without modesty." "That'll be grand," said the ghost with enthusiasm. "Well, come," said the spirit, and for a few paces he supported the hobbling shadow toward the east. "Of course," said the ghost, as if speaking to itself, "there'll always be interesting people to meet." "Everyone will be interesting." "Oh, aye, yes, to be sure. I was thinking of people in our own line. Shall we meet Claude, or Cézanne, or, well, sooner or later, if they're here. But don't you know?" Well, of course not. I've only been here a few years myself. All the chances are against my having run across them. There are a good many of us, you know. But surely in the case of distinguished people, you'd hear. But they aren't distinguished, no more than anyone else. Don't you understand? The glory flows into everyone, and back from everyone like light in mirrors. But the light's the thing. Do you mean there are no famous men here? They're all famous. They are all known, remembered, recognized by only the mind that can give perfect judgment. Oh, of course, in that sense, said the ghost. Don't stop, said the spirit, making to lead him forward. One must be content with one's reputation among prosperity then, said the ghost. My friend, said the spirit, don't you know? Know what? That you and I are already completely forgotten on earth. Eh? What's that? Exclaimed the ghost, disengaging its arm. Do you mean those damn neo-religionists have won after all? Lord love you, yes, said the spirit, once more shaking and shining with laughter. You couldn't get £5 for any picture of mine, or even of yours in Europe or America today. We're dead out of fashion. I must be off at once, said the ghost. Let go of me. Damn it all, one has one's duties to the future of art. I must go back to my friends. I must write an article. There must be a manifesto. We must start a periodical. We must have publicity. Let me go. This is beyond a joke. And without listening to the spirit's reply, the spectre vanished. And that's the end of chapter 9. Next week we'll continue with chapter 10. Until then, take care, stay safe, and God bless.